This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to the show. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush. You're watching Kentucky's Voice. You know, Kentucky's Voice is the only program in this state and in this city and in this region that deals with news and politics from a conservative perspective. So, let me say this, because Bob likes to emphasize this, and so do I. It's a Christian conservative perspective, because at the end of the day, I think we all see that, that politics and religion is sort of merging, and because it always has been merged. You really can't have a political culture. You can't have a society. You can't have a civilization without a common moral framework, something that we all agree on. And historically in America and in the West, it's been Christianity or Judeo-Christianity, because Judaism is basically part of Christianity in a lot of ways. So, and, well, whatever, we can get into the theological side of that, but Judeo-Christianity is the way we look at it. So, because every law has a moral basis behind it, right? I mean, so every law has a belief system behind it. So the whole idea that you can separate politics and religion is kind of really, it's bunk. And I think conservatives these days are at the point where we realize that, well, we've had this whole separation of church and state stuff forever, and people have been pushing that line, and yet the only thing that's happened is the left and the secularists, they've got to push their religion on us. And so it's finally like, hold on, really this country's a Christian country. We kind of have a Christian worldview, and that's very important. It means a lot of things. Doesn't mean everybody has to be a Christian, but the Christian worldview basically is the ethos that we derive our moral framework from, and we have to, we need to just drill back into that. And you can't have a Christian country without Christians, right? You got to have people that believe in something. And so I was listening to the great atheist from England. I forgot his name. He's one of these Dawkins. So he was Richard Dawkins. He was talking about how he really of course he's an atheist, but he misses the great hymns and the carols around Christmas, and he misses people going to church, and he misses the culture of Christianity. But Mr. Dawkins, you can't have the culture of Christianity without Christians, without a belief in God. So at the end of the day, it's just very important. So, we're talking politics, we're talking news here, we're talking, the MAGA world, the Trump thing, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, what's really important in our society right now is to get a moral framework reestablished that is based on something true and transcendental and eternal, and that is really the Judeo-Christian framework. Because either it's true or it's not, right? It's either it's true or it's not. If it's not true, then forget it. All this stuff doesn't mean anything. We could just all become Nazis and kill the Jews, because it's all just our opinions at the end of the day, right? So if there's no God, you can't blame the Nazis, because they all got together and say, hey, it's moral for us to go kill the Jews, and so that's our morality. And we came along and said, no, there's morality beyond that. There's morality beyond your opinion. And it's called God. There's a natural law that came from God, and that's wrong. And so we're going to create gallows that you're going to hang from because you gassed 6 million Jews. And so we're going to kill you for that. And we were morally righteous in doing that. And so without that Judeo-Christian worldview, you don't have that. So anyway, that's my little monologue for today. We're bringing Bob Scott. We got about a minute left. Bob, you want to comment on that before we go on another?
No, I think it's pretty much right on the money, Tom, that we are living. They've tried to, for many years, separate religion from politics, or Christianity from politics. And no, I'm sorry, that's not the way our country was initially founded and set up. And it's high time and long overdue that we start having that discussion about the blending of the two.
But Bob, you're a Christian nationalist. You're a Christian nationalist. You're going to impose your religion on me.
I'm a Christian who also happens to be a nationalist.
That's right. There we go.
Which means simply, I love my country.
That's right. That's right. Now, tell you what we're going to talk about the rest of the show. We're going to talk about the far left and where we are culturally and how violent they are and how we need to prepare for possibly some more violence. And so what we're talking about, a lot of things. Kentucky's Voice. We'll be back.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to the show. This is Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, with my co-host Bob Scott, and we are going to talk about something a little serious here, and this is about where we are as a culture, as a society, as a civilization. The moment we're in, we're kind of in an inflection point, and many have talked about of course, the violence we're seeing now from the left, the far left violence that is rampant, the murders, the assassinations, the mass shootings, the mental instability, the riots, the all this just craziness that is so unusual. It's so, at least for America, at least for the past 50, 60 years, we haven't seen this sort of thing, and so there's a great article I want to read some clips from, and Bob, I want to get your thoughts on this. It's from Zero Hedge, and the title is this a prelude to the Second Civil War? All right, are we about to go into a civil war? And a lot of people have talked about that. It's like what is this stuff? Can the left and right get along? Is it going to break out in violence? Well, we're in violence, right? But are we at a war footing? I don't think so. But this article makes a great point about the first Civil War. And so if you understand history, there was a period before the first Civil War called Bleeding Kansas. And Bleeding Kansas was this moment where as the U.S. was expanding across the continent, you had the territories that were in the west, west of the Mississippi, and those territories were going to eventually become states. But there was a debate on whether, these states were going to be free states or slave states, because that was the big debate in the country at the time. We had two cultures, we had two worldviews about something existential such as slavery, and we couldn't agree. And so what happened is, as the country expanded, whoever could get political dominance in the federal system by bringing in their state as a slave state, or new states as slave states, so they would kind of win that political argument. So what would happen is settlers that were politically motivated would move into places like Kansas that were either pro-slavery or anti-slavery, and the goal was, we got to get enough pro-slavery people into Kansas or enough anti-slavery people into Kansas to prevent Kansas from becoming a slave state. And so what happened is people moved in, and there was a lot of civil strife, a lot of debate, just like we're having now, two worldviews that couldn't get along, and basically ended up having a guerrilla sort of civil unrest, to the point where it was a small scale war. It was going on in Kansas, called Bleeding Kansas. This is where John Brown came from. If you know anything about history, John Brown raided Harper's Ferry, and John Brown got his start in Kansas, Bleeding Kansas. So this period, for several years leading up to the Civil War, the news every day was dominated by, look what just happened in Kansas. All these people shooting it out and killing each other, these just brutal murders and just guerrilla actions going on, and it was called Bleeding Kansas. So the Civil War, the first Civil War, didn't just all of a sudden flip a switch and states just kind of separated and armies drew up and we just had a big war. No, there's a lead up to that. There's a lead up to that of a lot of strife and killings and political separation of people, and to the point where they just there's no compromise anymore. It was like, okay, it's just all about raw power now, and who's going to get control, and this article basically says that we could be at that moment in our country's history, and because they even used the term, it's not Bleeding Kansas, it's Bleeding Transis. Okay, so he's saying that the slavery issue was the key issue that separated the country back then. Well, in this day and era, it is the trans issue, or it's these social justice identity movements that are sort of rooted in existential religious views of human nature that are not compatible with one another. You're not born. If you're a boy, you're not a. You're born. If you're born a boy, you cannot become a girl, right? And that's what the traditional American Judeo-Christian worldview is. And these are really. You may think, well, that's just a trivial issue. That's not like slavery, but it really translates into a lot of things, such as, okay, you don't think your kid should transition? Well, the state's going to come in and take your kid away.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's where we're at, and that's what's happening in states right now in the United States. And so these are issues that we cannot see eye to eye on. We will never agree on, And so we could be at this. That's why you get somebody that's involved in the trans ideology, assassinating Charlie Kirk. This guy was like the John Brown of the 1860s, or the 1850s. This guy was, you're pro-slavery, we're going to kill you, and that's, and vice versa. Then you hit all the pro-slavery people shooting back, and so. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's kind of where. So Bob, quick, your thoughts on any of that? What are your?
Well, first of all, gender dysmorphia was until during the Obama administration, it was classified as a medical condition, involving mental health.
That's right.
That's a fact. But they basically came in and rewrote that. And all that did was empower people that really, and let me say this real quick, people that are suffering with this, it's a real thing. And I feel honestly awful for them.
Heartbroken.
That they're having to walk through this. And then, in my opinion, the far left, and that's who's pushing this, is making that situation even worse by coming in and acknowledging it as a normal thing, and it's not.
It's not loving to enable somebody
way, shape,
to go down a path
form.
like that. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. People. Same thing with just people that have same-sex attractions to encourage that and say, hey, you were born that way. You used to live this lifestyle out, and live this way, and with all the heartache and trouble and it brings to the people involved and the world around them. It's just tragic. And now. And that's the conservative view. That's the Christian view. You love the sinner, hate the sin, right? And
listen, it's not just the Christian view. I mean, it's a common sense view, and yes, it is Christian in the sense that God created them. What does the Word of God say? Male and female. He created them. He created us. And as you said, and scientifically, any scientist that's honest, is going to say. There's basically two genders, male and female, and you can't magically change any of that. And again, all that this ideology has done is thrown fuel on a fire and made it. And I'll say this, I do know, because I've talked to them, there are Democrats that don't buy into the transgender, garbage at all.
Right. They'll try to draw that line right there. I'm pro LGBT. But I'm not T, which why it's an arbitrary line, because at the end of the day, once you believe in the L, B, and G, that is the T. Just throw, it's just so. At the end of the day, it's the whole movement. But yeah. So and you touched on it perfectly. It's the ideology that we need to focus on, because we got to have a heart for people that are going through these issues. We don't hate these people. We're not trying to oppress them, and at the same time, we're trying to love them and help encourage them to heal, in a lot of ways. But or if they want to live that lifestyle, live it quietly, just don't push on everybody else, and don't force us to go along with it and use pronouns and do drag shows in front of our kids. Just go live that. You're an adult. Go live that way if you want to go live that way. But just don't bring this ideology into the mainstream, where it's enforce it down our throat. And so that's the issue we're having now. There's an ideology that is trying to get political power to enforce its worldview on us, and it's turning into a violent moment here in the country.
Yeah, and that's the big thing right now. I'm sure you've heard about what's going on with Netflix right now. And
glad you brought that up. I was going to, we need to cancel Netflix, folks. Everybody cancel.
Well,
go ahead.
Correct. I didn't have it to start with, but absolutely. And it's people like even Elon Musk are speaking out against it as well, because they have introduced it. No place that this should be in children's programming, especially cartoons and things like that.
Well, you brought it up. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip while you're talking about this. So go ahead. Yeah. Mr. Producer, go ahead.
It's an ideology that they're trying to bring about, and there it is.
Here, I'm going to play this real quick.
A whole new place. I can just be Barney, and I can choose if and when I tell people. I've never been happier. And that's saying something when I spent today chased by terrifying zombie mascots.
Okay, you can see, does this look?
This is I wouldn't have a whole lot of time to go with 30 seconds left. This is a cartoon that's on Netflix, one of many cartoons that are on Netflix.
That
it wasn't are basically just one. Pushing transgender
as you said, I know there's only 30
ideology
to go in
to
this
kids.
Segment, but this is a major deal, and
it's a major deal.
They're not the only ones doing it. It's
that's
other.
Right. So what's happening right now on X?
Media out there.
Yeah, what's happening right now is X's Elon is raising a movement to cancel Netflix, and their stock has dropped dramatically. People are canceling them left and right. I canceled mine last night, so I encourage you to cancel Netflix and make a point. This is the new Bud Light, situation. Cancel Netflix. We'll be right back on Kentucky's Voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Radicalized propaganda.
Can you switch?
Yesterday's pronouns are they, them.
He or she just doesn't fit who I am. My apologies. Please switch berries. Now, the plan.
There we go. So there we go. That's a clip of a new Transformers video airing on Netflix, and basically Megatron. Is that Megatron? Forget the characters there. Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime's asking one of these new Transformers what they're. Yeah, there we go. I just broke the whole lore of Transformers. I should know that. I'm a Gen Xer. But anyway, so Optimus is asking this Transformer their pronouns, and I apologize, you're calling you the wrong gender. And this is for kids. This is a cartoon that Netflix is playing for kids. No business doing this. No business putting this garbage in front of our kid. This is just propaganda to change the next generation. Because remember, folks, the left, they don't have children, right? They need your children. That's why they take over education. That's why they get into media and try to propagandize. And so the next generation, it's their job to propagandize your kids to believe this crap. So we got to push back. You got to cancel Netflix. And this is happening right now. There's a big movement to cancel Netflix. Their stock is dropping like a rock.
Oh, it's tanking. It's not just dropping. It's tanking.
It's tanking. Exactly right. And so keep it up. Cancel it, folks. You don't need it anyway. You admit it. You probably watch one Netflix show every year, but you're still paying $15 a month because you did it 15 years ago. Cancel it. There's plenty of other options now. There's YouTube. There's all this other stuff. So just cancel it. But anyway, but Bob's a great point about the Netflix. I want to get back to the bleeding can. Unless you want to make a point real quick. Go ahead.
Well, and it's not just Netflix. The Super Bowl. The halftime show has been notorious for many years, bringing in, leftist type of entertainment. Yeah. And this year's no exception. It kind of surprised me a little bit because I thought, it's football, and they have a halftime performer that goes by the name of Bad Bunny, and he I think he uses the term something to the effect gender fluid, and definitely dresses a lot in female clothing, that type of thing. And again, it's a not so subtle. I'm not going to say it's subtle. They're shoving it right in our faces.
They do not know their audience, right? This is red-blooded American working men.
No,
what are they doing?
I hear you. I think it goes deeper than that. I think they do know the audience, and they're trying to influence. They're obviously, you said it a second ago. They're hoping that there's going to be a lot of young eyes on it, and there will be. And that they can continue to. I think Jay-Z is the person that they use to do the quote unquote entertainment, as far as the halftime show is concerned. And it's just, again, another attempt at the left, the extreme left ideology trying to be shoved down our throats. And again, a simple thing is, and I stopped watching the NFL for many years because of this. And I must admit, this year I've watched a few games. And honestly, they've been really pretty good. Haven't seen anything out in left field, but I think,
except for the male cheerleaders. Yeah.
Well, other than that, I guess if you're a Viking fan, that's not very acceptable. But the bottom line is, until people, I've got my Charlie Kirk freedom shirt on today, and I'm wearing my Gadsden flag hat. And just, saying that it's time, people, to speak up, and I think, truthfully, pressure needs to be put on the NFL. It's not too late. They can change that show.
That's
right. And
right.
at the very least, if they don't change it, and if they're going to still try to cram it down our throats, just simply turn it off. A lot of people do that anyway. And do something else at halftime. You don't have to watch that garbage and bring that stuff into your house.
That's right. It's time to fight back. This is how you fight back. This is how you can engage and fight back. And you need to cancel Netflix. Do it today. And then I did it last night. So when you cancel, there's you can give a reason why. So I put in there and I said stop transing kids. And that was my reason why.
Good for
you. So
yeah.
So make sure you do that. But okay, back to the bleeding Kansas or bleeding Transas, which is where we're at in this country right now. We're in this what some scholars are saying a pre-Civil War state in this country, because we've now have risen beyond just political disagreement to a civil strife, to where, because the academics study Civil War and how it happens in the country. There's stages of it, and we are at this inflection point where this could go further. This could escalate to a civil war, but we are in a sort of a pre-Civil War stage where very similar to the bleeding Kansas, where we have murders and violence and political agitation that is to the point where people can no longer compromise, and it's all about a power struggle of who can dominate the institutions, and so now the left. They're doubling down on their violence strategy. Of course, the whole Charlie Kirk thing, when that happened, you saw a lot of people on the left. They celebrated, right? They celebrated, and not everybody on the left. There are some decent people on the left, or of course, they need to move out of the left. But a lot of them are celebrating, and so here are some things that they're doing. Like pull this up, Mr. Producer. The Antifa. Right here is created no-go zones for federal forces. So this is a clip from a 7 steps to stop ICE. Okay, this is what Antifa has put out, and what they're asking people to do: form resistance groups, establish community assemblies, build communication systems, strategize and set a combative example, compel local politicians to break off cooperation with federal authorities. Sound familiar? That sounds like Succession. We're just going to ignore federal power. And so create no-go zones for federal forces. Create no-go zones for. So let me read real quickly what they were just that sub. Okay, if ICE agents hesitate to enter certain areas without backing from police, National Guard, and Marines, that will limit their operations. The more resources they have to commit to every raid, the fewer attacks they will be able to carry out, and more expensive their power grab will be. This is what they're doing. This stuff is escalating, and they're escalating to the point.
And in no way is this organized in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
Well, they want it to be decentralized because they've learned the lesson. If there's a leader, they go after. So they claim it's very decentralized, but there are people that are organizing this stuff and writing this stuff here.
Well, of course there are. This stuff just doesn't happen out of thin air, folks. I mean,
Right.
it's I think it's the RICO Act that they're trying to. And I'm talking about the Trump administration is looking at, where there is a coordinated effort, going on to sow mass destruction. And I think it's a lot bigger than this, Tom. I really personally do. I think this is a global type or globalist type thing that's going on, where they're trying to get people, and specifically at our country, we know the motto of our state is united we stand, divided we fall, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. And I think the bigger picture is that's what they're trying to do, is to weaken and bring down the United States. They would love to see us, fall into a civil war. I personally am not going to fall for that.
Right.
And I think that we do need to stand strong. And I'm not saying we don't enforce our borders. We enforce the laws of our country. And I think we need to do that very dramatically, as President Trump has done. And we need to follow through with that. But we cannot allow groups like Antifa and other anarchist groups to do what they want to do and sow discord and get where Americans are at each other's throats.
Well said. Yeah, and what we need to insist that our leaders in this state, and of course the federal government's generally on our side right now, but even at the state level, we need to get Andy Beshear to speak out against this stuff. Are you for these protests? Are you for these Antifa and all these, not just Antifa, there's all these little subgroups like the John Brown Gun Club, actually using John Brown. We just mentioned him earlier. John Brown Gun Club. This is a left-wing militant group. There's like a armed queer group or something, whatever. There's all these weird little armed groups that are popping up on the left, and you would think that the boogeyman is the right. The right's got all the guns. They're the Second Amendment guys, but apparently there's a lot of armed up leftists now, and so and it's getting creepy. So we're going to talk about what to look for next in the next. So if this is going to escalate, we're going to talk about what to look for, and also who in this state and in this city are groups that are doing this stuff, and what's about to happen this month. There's some protests about to happen this month that could kick some stuff off. So we'll be right back after on Kentucky's Voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Tom Fallbush. Bob Scott joins me today. We're talking about are we at a prelude to a civil war, right? And now it's pretty heavy, Tom. We're talking civil war. Well, if you're halfway awake, you can see there's some unusual things happening in our body politic right now. We've got some assassinations occurring. We've got mass shootings occurring. We've got, if you lived through the past, social justice decade here of, all the cancellations, cancel culture, all this stuff, people forcing social justice stuff down your throat or lose your job or lose your way of life. We're in a new phase of civil strife that is escalating, and there's only one or two ways this goes. Either one side just becomes dominant, and they gain the political power, and then the culture sort of learns. We all just agree that okay, this is the right way to move forward, and the other side loses, or we continue to escalate until we get to that point. And so, because you can't have these two worldviews, this far left worldview and a traditional Judeo-Christian worldview, they can't live in the same country anymore. I'm sorry, folks. It's just we cannot. It's like you cannot have a country free and slave. We're at that point, and America hits that point every so often. And there's a book written a few years ago. It was very, very prophetic. It was called The Fourth Turning. It talks about how every 80 years America goes through these crises that build up, and we have to kind of relearn the lessons of how to govern and how to country.
Yeah.
And it's it's very interesting because he starts with the revolution, goes from revolution to the Civil War was 80 years, and then between that period there was this cultural battle that erupted, and it gets settled at the end of that 80 year period. So basically you had revolution, then the abolitionist movement kicks in, and then we had to resolve that with a civil war in the 1860s. Go another 80 years, you get to World War II, and you get to the Great Depression and all the stuff going on there. How are we going to govern? How are we going to? So it's another war that we had to deal with. World War II, Depression to now. All right, what do we have? We had a cultural revolution in the '60s. It's now playing out to where we have two basically diametrically opposed worldviews that can no longer function together in the same society, and you're starting to see people bifurcate geographically. They're now saying, okay, red state or blue state. I'm moving to the red state. I'm going to the blue state, and so you're seeing this sort of moment in our country's history, which is pretty dangerous, pretty unsettling, but it just is what it is. We got to be wide out about it, and so Bob, here's a few things to look for, the signals to look for as far as the next steps. We've already seen a lot of civil strife. We're already in the bleeding transit stage, as the author says here, not bleeding Kansas, but bleeding transit, using trans ideology as a stand-in for slavery. But look for municipal non-cooperation, so a hardening of no-go zones, right? So you're going to see more blue cities, blue states saying, no, we're going to ignore the federal government. We're going to stand up. And of course, you're seeing that now. You're seeing Gavin Newsom say that. You're seeing the potential new mayor of New York saying we're not going to enforce immigration law. We're going to block ICE. We're going to prevent all this stuff. So look for more of that to, this is proto-Confederate sort of ideas, secessionist ideas. We're going to ignore the federal government. So look for more of that to grow. Look for target selection shifting further towards federal nodes. So people are going to see ICE and marshals and courthouses and federal contractors targeted now. You're going to see doctrinal diffusion. So more militants parroting area command language. And so basically, you're going to see militants use this sort of communist language, of communist guerrilla insurgency language, which they're using. I mean, I could pull up more examples of this, their discussion with one another, and just I'll pull this up in a second. There's Reddit is a website that a lot of these leftists use now, and the calls for violence. They're all saying we need to arm up now. We need to fight back. We can't let ICE do this. It's time to get our guns. They're saying this, folks. They really are. And this isn't just a bunch of little nice liberal college kids. These are some whacked out people that are
well, and you have professors
pushing it,
basically, touting this at universities. And I saw an article by Fox News this morning that calling out two professors at I believe they were at an Ivy League school that were touting this very philosophy of, not philosophy, I mean, to me, it's treasonous, where you're calling out and telling people it's okay because you're not getting your way and you don't like what's being said on the other side. So, hey, let's pick up guns and let's go take on the other side and kill them if we need to.
That's exactly right. And that's where they're at. And now I think a lot of these people are just spiritually empty. They're mentally ill.
Yeah,
but there's still enough of them. There's still enough of them. And there's enough of a movement and ideology for them to get behind, and a political system and an institutional level that supports them to where they want to move on and do this sort of thing.
And Tom, you make a good point, because at the end of the day, and we've talked about this a lot, over the last several weeks since the death of Charlie Kirk, or the murder of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, that there is a morally bankrupt part of our society that's out there that's devoid of anything good and pertaining to things of God. And we know that it says in Ephesians 6 that we are in a battle, and it's a spiritual battle. It goes much deeper than just the physical stuff that we see going on.
Yeah.
It is a real spiritual battle, real. We had Kedrick Timbo on here recently, and he was talking about that, the idea of possession, and that even Turning Point and Charlie Kirk, I guess, had reached out to him a while back about some of the things that they were seeing, folks that were coming to their actual events, that they knew that it was going beyond just the normal protest, but it was very demonic, in nature.
That's
so
right.
That's the other thing. People don't like to talk about the fact that the devil's real, and he was a created being.
That's right.
And he is meant on sowing discord and death. That's what he does.
That's right.
So we are to be wise. What does the word say? Be wise as serpents, yet gentle as doves, but yet speak the truth. That's what Charlie Kirk did, and that's what we that endeavor. And we're not perfect; we're far from it. But we endeavor who want to walk on the right side.
That's right.
Of history and the right side of God must do. And I want to also remind people, if they have a comment, please text in. We'd love to hear from you, 502-571-0970. Again, love to hear your thoughts on this.
Please do, folks. Yeah, love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that we're going to see more violence in Louisville and in Kentucky?
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah,
I pray not. But do I think that's a very real possibility? Yes, I do. But it's not something that I'm hoping, obviously, that will happen. I mean, we don't want it to happen, but again, be wise as serpents, yet gentle as doves.
And be prepared for it. And I've got a tweet here from Stephen Miller. I'll pull this up, Mr. Producer. This is the administration's response to this. We are witnessing domestic terrorist sedition against the federal government. The Joint Terrorist Task Force has been dispatched by the Attorney General pursuant to National Security -7. All necessary resources will be utilized. So the Trump administration, the federal government has taken this very seriously, and they're coming down hard. And they've done a great job of shutting some of this stuff down. And so I've got some hope there that we have a strong federal response. And you see them going into cities like L.A. with the ICE riots. They're going into Memphis and Chicago and all these cities that for two reasons.
Blue cities. What a coincidence! Blue cities for the most part.
Blue cities, exactly. Or blue cities.
Not all though. I mean, they've gone into Memphis and are addressing
it's a blue
situations.
City. It's a blue city.
But it's a blue city. But
it's
just a red state.
Two reasons here. They're sending them in for one. It could be all this Antifa violence, anti-ICE violence. So that's one reason to send them in. There's other cities that just have rampant crime. That the blue policies are blue Democrat mayors have let fester, and so we have some hope there. But this doesn't mean we've solved the problem because the ideology is still there, and we have to push back, and we have to make sure that these institutions, like the academia, like media, like Netflix, like all of the the Democratic Party, all these leftists, they need to be taught a lesson. I'm sorry, sometimes like when you're raising a kid and a kid keeps wanting to touch the stove, sometimes you let them touch the stove. You kind of go, okay, you want to see how this hurts? This hurts, doesn't it? Yeah. Maybe we need to start locking some people up. We need to go after James Comey. Maybe we need to indict Hillary. We need to go after these folks that are doing this kind of stuff, that's creating this division, and definitely go after the Antifa. I'm glad we made them a terrorist group. Before you get into that, let me mention this too. There's a huge protest movement that you need to be looking out for. It's called 5051. I'm going to pull this up, Mr. Producer. 5051. I mentioned this before a few weeks ago. 50501 is a name you might not know, but you must learn ASAP. What that is a movement. It stands for 50 states, 50 protests, and one something. I think one movement or whatever. But it's basically a far-left, anti-fascist movement that is calling itself 5051. If you look at the surface, it appears to be some democracy-focused progressive protest network. The name means 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. It's a friendly pitch. It allows to press releases and polite interviews. But if you dig in further, it's really dark, demonic, and deadly. In Reddit groups tied to 5051, members of the group are openly calling for armed retaliation, shootings, and even assassination. Let me show you some of this. What's going on. This is in that 5051 group. Look at some of these posts here. People need to start blasting. Shoot first, ask later. Those are kidnappers. Take them out. They pushed us to the point of violence. Sorry, Reddit censors, but this is an undeniable fact. There's more on the left with pew-pews than you might think. Karl Marx was very pro pew-pew meaning guns. Well, since the king just took the capital city by force with the military, perhaps it's time to fight back if these people exist. Agreed. Lots of dudes wearing Kevlar. Those agents should be handcuffed behind their backs and given a 10-second head start. I'll get banned if I say what I really think. This is the conversation, folks. This is really happening out there. So this isn't over. These people are still motivated. Look, and there's actually this movement is coming to Louisville this month. I'll show you where these protests are going to happen this month. We'll be right back on Kentucky's Voice.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for Real news,
Okay, cool.
real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, we're talking. Are we in a prelude to a civil war in the country, folks? You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Tom Fallbush, co-host Bob Scott. And if you look, I mean, we're dealing with protests, obviously, but we're beyond protest now. There's a lot of violence and violence being celebrated and being called for on the left. And I tell you what, go ahead, Mr. Producer, play that video we were talking about during the break. This is just a recent Jimmy Kimmel protest. I'm sure you heard about that situation where he was he was canceled and brought back and all this. But if you notice in all their language that they're using is the right and people that are traditional Americans are fascist, right? Or we're Nazis, right? And so this is the problem. The rhetoric on the left has not changed. They've doubled down on that. Even the politicians at the highest level, Gavin Newsom the other day was using the word fascist against Trump. So whenever they use the word fascist or Nazi, it is a call to violence against us. Because what do you do to a fascist? What do you do to a Nazi? You punch them. You kill them. They're an existential threat to you. And so the left really, they believe this in their mind, their heart of heart, that there's this Nazi thing going on, which is, and Bob, you and I both know, the most fascist and Nazi thing existing in this country are them.
Yes, 100%. In fact, it's interesting. One of our listeners did text in. They said militias are not always a dangerous idea. They were formed in many areas for protection years prior to the revolution. Our local law enforcement is forced to do the bidding of a Democrat mayor, and that can really apply to any blue city. We witnessed that dilemma during the protest riots here in Louisville.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, well said. I'm going to pull up this map, Mr. Producer. This is a map of from a website I follow called Forward Observer. It's a paid subscription site, but they do they're actually a bunch of former Army intel officers and Navy intel officers, and it's a free, not free, it's just paid, but it's a really interesting. So they track all the protests around the country. And so here's Louisville. You've got a protest that's going to occur for the 50. Actually, it's the No Kings protest. Okay, it's October 18th in downtown Louisville. We've got another protest here that's going to happen tomorrow in front of Mitch McConnell's office. It's we got another one over in Jeffersonville on the 18th, part of the No Kings, Southern Indiana. We've got one over in Crescent Hill, I believe. I'll back this out. You can see this throughout the country. There are all these protests popping up around all these different leftist movements. And so this map kind of tracks
coordinated protests, I might add.
Coordinated protests, right. And it's just, there's thousands of them. And so they're motivated by this radical left ideology that believes we're all fascists, believes we're all Nazis, believes Trump's an existential threat. They have this worldview that's antithetical to traditional Judeo-Christian Western views, and so they're on their heels because of the election didn't go their way, so they're acting out, and they're acting out violently, and it's just not a good moment.
It's funny. I didn't notice any of that from the right when Trump, quote unquote, lost the election.
But they'll say January 6th, January 6th.
And you're right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And what are we now finding out about January 6th? We're finding out that there was close to 250 FBI agents that were mingled in, apparently.
That's right.
Into the crowd after they lied, before Congress and said there was something like 25 informants that were in there. So, that whole thing is completely crumbling downward, exactly right. In the process.
Yeah. And the way they treated the people that were Listen, I got a friend of mine who was there on January 6th, and she was not at the Capitol, but she had I'll tell you, I said the story before. I'll tell you the story. She had a cell phone, and she had lost it at January 6th. She came back to Louisville, and she was in I think it was AT&T or T-Mobile, whatever. Say, hey, I lost my cell phone at January 6th. I was there in D.C. and I need to get a new phone. Well, that person called the FBI and said, hey, this person was at January 6th.
Yeah.
FBI here in Louisville shows up at her house, knocks on the door. Ma'am, were you at the Capitol on January 6th? And she froze. And this is at her front door. This is here in Louisville. She froze, and she just said, if I say yes, I'm going to go to jail. And she would have. She would have went to jail. So she just said, no, I was nowhere near the Capitol. I'm sorry. I was and she didn't go in and do all that stuff, but she was there in D.C. And so we lived through that. We lived through that police state of the Biden era and the Obama era, really. It just started with him.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
So yeah, that stuff's real, and so anyway, and so they say, well, Tom, you don't want to use their tactics. You don't want to, because you don't want to do this because when they get power, they'll do this to you. Well, they're already done that to us, right? And so they're already doing this to us. They're already locking us up for our political views, and so now it's time to actually go after them through the justice system, because these people have broken laws. So let's go after them aggressively. And like you said, let them touch the stove, just like a kid that doesn't behave. Okay, you need to go touch that stove and see what it tastes like. Maybe then we'll get them to back down because they're. Anyway, Bob, I can go on there. So,
no, and that's right. And I think this is the RICO Act. I believe that they're going to have to start putting that in. And of course, it was a federal law that targets organized crime, and it basically allows prosecutors to charge individuals, for a pattern of criminal activity. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go.
Committed within a criminal enterprise, and it was obviously originally intended to target organized crime, like for example, like the mafia. But boy, has this country changed a lot since 1970, and now there's a lot of things, and you have people like on the far left, like George Soros, who are actively funding leftist causes, throughout our country and really throughout the world. In fact, there's some countries he can't even step into because of some of the garbage he's pulled.
Yeah.
But this is a real thing, just like you said.
It's a real thing. And it's not this both sides stuff. They say, well, both sides are doing this. The right is just as dangerous. The right's that is so wrong. The right is not doing this stuff. Nope. There isn't this right-wing epidemic of violence. It is all coming from the left.
That's right.
And even when they do claim right-wing violence, they lump in like maybe people that are being racist, have some sort of racist shooting or something. The right isn't racist. It's just the opposite. So whenever they just do a tally of right wing versus left wing violence, they always include all these like racial shootings and stuff. The right we're the opposite of that. We're all about to treat people as individuals, and so it's just a total lie to even do that. So the right is not that way. But and somebody made this great point the other night. They said the right looks at violence like a switch, right? And so it's like you turn it on and you turn it off. The left use it as a policy, as a technique, and that they can dial up. And right now they're trying to dial it up to get them to make you back down and be fearful. Don't go to some rally because you might get shot. Don't go to this because you're going to don't speak out against anything in your office if they start pushing DEI policies or LGBT, making you, if you don't hang that pride flag in your cubicle, don't say anything against it because, this, it's intimidation, and that's what they do. They're authoritarian, and you can see it work themselves out all the way up to the violence level. So anyway, I'm saying all this today, folks, just to make you aware of it. Don't think that the fight's over. The fight is nowhere near over, and there has to be a moment in this country where the left is totally repudiated, so we can kind of move on as a country where we all agree on the way things should be, and we're kind of getting there. I think the Charlie Kirk moment, Bob, what are your thoughts? I think the Charlie Kirk
No,
moment
that's good. And we
is
did
kind
get
of that
another
tipping
text
point. Yeah.
that just came in on our text line, and the listener says, alerting the public. This is really referring to what you just talked about. Alerting the public of where and when these protests are is a good idea. So people can avoid these areas, and as merchants lose business, they may support law enforcement. And I don't really think it's so much the merchants is the problem. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but it is obviously the violence, that's being brought in. And I feel bad for the merchants. I know some merchants, that are, and usually it's unfortunately downtown Louisville where a lot of this stuff occurs, that have been greatly hurt, by this, and they're not happy about this. And, our downtown area, just look at it. It's been decimated. I mean, it's not anywhere close to what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And if you say it's the same, you're not telling the truth. That's a lie.
Yeah, drive around downtown Louisville, look at all the for lease signs. And that all happened right after the Breonna Taylor riots, all the BLM riots in the state. People said, forget it, I'm not going downtown. These people are nuts. And so it's just anyway, so folks, so I say all this to be forewarned. We could be moving towards an escalation of this, depending on how the left behaves. But the left needs to be taught a lesson. They need to be shut down. They need to be told that violence is not the way to do this. And also, your ideas stink, and no one supports your ideas anymore. They're no longer fashionable, right? Because a lot of people follow this stuff because it's fashionable. And because the past 10 years in social media has told me that, everybody believes this way. To be a righteous person and a virtuous person, I must do this. I must support this. Well, that is, we're starting to repudiate that. Thank goodness. And it comes from an alternate worldview that can be presented and celebrated. And I think that's our traditions and our faith. Because if without a return to our faith in this country, we're lost. And because at the end of the day, culture cannot live without the cult, right? The culture comes from the word cult.
And I just want to say this real quick.
Cult is the religion. So
we are here to be that stopgap for you, the listener, the conservative Christian listener. You're not going to hear what we've shared today anywhere else. Alerting the public to the areas where these protests are happening. You're not hearing that anywhere else. And that is our commitment. We're going to be running down some rabbit holes, in the process. Some may take us somewhere, some may not. But you can know that you're always going to hear. We may not always be right, but you're going to hear the truth, from Tom, myself, and Kentucky's Voice in general. We're excited that we're not going to make too much of an announcement right now, but Tom and I are going to be teaming up starting in November. We're going to be doing a Thursday, Friday show, that will be very similar to the one that you have been able to listen to today.
It's going to rock. It's going to be awesome. And so remember, cancel Netflix. Cancel Netflix. This is what you can do today. There's a movement right now to cancel Netflix. Get on there and do it. Elon Musk is pushing it. Their stock is dropping like a rock. Cancel it. And also go to church. Go to church.
Yes,
just
amen.
Go to church. I mean, if anything else, if you don't do anything else after this moment from Charlie Kirk, this assassination, the moment we're in, if you do nothing else, just go to church. I know a lot of you haven't been there for years. Just go to a Bible-believing church that believes in the God's word and go. It's the best thing you can ever do. We'll be back tomorrow.